Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Neighbor threatens to sue me. I played a reverse Uno. After that, am I the jerk for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? And after that, stepsister destroyed my books, gets her trip canceled. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets sued. Do I get to meet Judge Judy? So please speak to that like button's manager and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Neighbor threatens to sue me. I played a reverse Uno. I recently moved into a neighborhood in Michigan. One of my neighbors, we'll call him Bob, came over to introduce himself. He told me that he has a special needs son that lives with him. The son is in his 30s with significant mental disabilities. Bob first asked if I would mind keeping dangerous things out of my yard, like not leaving chainsaws or something unattended. That's pretty reasonable. But then he proceeded to tell me that I needed to keep my garage door down at all times, or I had to lock up anything dangerous if I wanted to keep them up, like all gasoline, sharp tools, fertilizers, etc. Oh, also any beer or other drinks, like in my garage fridge. I also need to keep my door locked at all times, or else his son may wander into my house. Then Bob tells me that now that I've been warned, if his son gets into anything, I'm now liable to be sued by him. And I told Bob in no uncertain terms that he was to control his kid. And if that his kid came into my house and broke stuff, I'd absolutely sue him and he'd absolutely pay. Later, I met the other neighbors and recounted this tale. They all got the same lecture from Bob when they moved in, and they just said, "Okay, Bob," and ignored it. They all think I handled it wrong and that I should have just let Bob think that everything was good. They think I'm being a jerk to Bob by not letting him believe he didn't have anything to worry about. Not the jerk. That kid is Bob's responsibility, not yours. I will suggest putting up no trespassing signs and cameras. I would go a step further and send Bob and his son an official notice of trespass. I'd also inform Bob that I'd be contacting the authorities should his son be wandering alone without a caretaker. That's not good for the son's safety, especially considering he looks like an adult, and strangers will react as such. Not the jerk, OP. Am I the jerk for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? My wife and I hired a babysitter, Adeline, who's 18, for our kids, who are 8 months, 2, 4, 5, and 7, a few months ago. Adeline is great with our kids, and she's the only babysitter that can handle so many kids. A couple problems are that she's constantly late. It's usually no more than 5 minutes. She has been 10 and even 15 minutes late, however, but it's still irritating. Another thing is, after she gets everyone asleep, she spends the rest of the night on her phone or laptop. She never cleans up in the playroom because she claims it's always messy, and she doesn't know where anything goes, and will only clean up what she did with the kids. For example, Adeline did an art project with my older 3 kids and cleaned the counters and the floor after that art project, but she didn't pick up the toys that were in the living room or do the dishes. Another problem is that her outfits. I've asked my wife to talk to her about it, but she refused, even though she admitted that she agreed about Adeline's clothes. My parents are in town and they wanted to take the kids on a walk. While on the walk, they saw Adeline on a run wearing an outfit that barely covered anything. Everyone saw her, and my kids talked about it for days. My 5-year-old has also been talking about how pretty she is and that he's going to marry her when he gets older, which is completely unacceptable. I decided to fire her because of the reasons I listed above. When I told my wife, she started screaming at me because she thinks Adeline is a great babysitter and is reasonably priced. I told her Adeline is a bad influence and I don't want her around my kids, but she's refusing to speak to me until I call Adeline back and offer her job back. She even wants me to offer her a raise if she says no. Am I the jerk for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? I cannot stop laughing. So much you're the jerk. If you want someone to clean your home, that is a separate service for which you must appropriately pay. From what your wife said, you're already underpaying the babysitter. So I'm sure your wife is fine with her being a few minutes late. You're already getting a great bargain. I'm sorry you're such a lazy slob that you don't clean your own house. I'm thinking it's best for Adeline that she no longer works for you. You're clearly a creep, and it's not safe for her there. Stepsister destroyed my books, gets her trip canceled. I'm 16, female. My dad married my stepmom 2 years ago. She has a daughter who's 16 called Bianca. Bianca and I don't like each other. She thinks I'm a spoiled brat and that I have a princess complex because both my parents came from money and I always get what I want. This is by no means true at all. While my parents bought me lots of things, I have a part-time job and keep my grades up to earn everything I ask for. One of the things I love the most are books. Fantasy, romance, crime, mystery, I love them all. My mom and I share this hobby, so we're always buying books and reading them together. I also have a Nintendo Switch and a TV in my room. Aside from my laptop and my phone, those are my most prized possessions. My sister is always asking to borrow my things: clothes, makeup, my Switch, or my books. I let her use the first three because I don't really care, but when it comes to my books, I don't let anybody else have them. A few weeks ago, she came and asked me to take one or two because she saw the guy she likes reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I happen to have that book, though I've still yet to read it. I said no, and we had a discussion because I was so spoiled to share. She asked again by dinner, and I said no. Then she asked by breakfast and tried to get my dad and stepmom in. Both of them agreed with me. I sent her a few links of the book on discount, and I thought that was it. But 3 days ago, when I came back from my mom's house, I found 7 of my books, including the one she wanted, ripped to pieces. Some big chunks of my wallpaper missing, and a few posters on the floor all destroyed. It was no mystery. As soon as I told my dad and stepmom, they knew it was her and grounded her. She was supposed to go to LA in June for her birthday, but her mom said she wasn't going to be paying for it, and since her dad won't either, he's a deadbeat, then she'll pretty much just miss it, since some for the money will be mine to replace all the things she destroyed, and the rest will be kept as punishment. She's now losing it on me and calling me every name under the sun because I ruined her trip and the guy has been talking to another girl. You know you're not the jerk. Your stepmom sounds awesome, considering she's making her daughter face consequences for her behavior instead of enabling it. OP. I was confident I was not the jerk, but some of my friends said that I went too far for some books because I can always replace them and that it was not that big of a deal compared to her trip because that was for her birthday. No, they're wrong. It doesn't matter what the items were. That's irrelevant. She destroyed things that didn't belong to her, and now she's facing the consequences. Not only that, but they were destroyed deliberately to hurt OP. Her stepsister likely needs counseling on better anger resolution. You didn't go too far. I don't think it was mentioned, but I have a feeling that you weren't the one who decided this punishment. You just had your property destroyed. It was your father and stepmother who made this decision. It is completely possible that even if you told your parents that she didn't have to replace it, they still wouldn't allow her to go because she did something awful and they have to discipline her to help her realize that she did wrong and to help ensure she doesn't do this again. Next time, remind your friends of this. Let them know that you didn't decide the punishment, and if they feel you just shouldn't have said anything after your room was destroyed, if they say you shouldn't have let your parents know and let your sister get away with doing this, then you may want to think deeper into those friendships. Not the jerk. You've done nothing wrong in this, and neither have your parents, in my opinion. I called roadside assistance today. Note that I am a physically capable adult male, mildly relevant. I blew out a tire while driving this afternoon, pulled off the busy road to a side street to assess the damage and start working on repairing the flat with the spare from the trunk. It turned out that the lug wrench provided in this particular car was absolutely tiny and thus provided very little leverage. Try as I might, I only managed to loosen one of the 5 lug nuts holding the tire on. No problem, I thought, as I have roadside assistance coverage on my auto insurance. A short call later, my insurance has dispatched a local service provider, and I receive a text stating that Daryl from the local provider will be arriving at my location by 2:34 p.m. That's less than a half-hour wait, so I'm pretty happy. At 2:33 p.m., a van approaches. The driver waves at me and pulls over. Driver immediately hops out with a toolkit in hand. We exchange brief pleasantries, and I explain my problem. Driver smiles and tells me the same thing happened to him last month and says not to worry about it. He takes out a proper wrench. I hand him the jack and spare, and he has my car back in operation in about 6 minutes flat. It was at this point when the conversation got a bit muddled. I asked him if he needs anything from me, like a signature, to ensure he gets paid. He responds that no money is necessary. I try to clarify my question and explain that I have roadside assistance on my policy and that my insurer got him dispatched to me and that I think they will pay his employer for the service call. His response? "Oh, no one dispatched me. I was just driving by and thought you could use some help." "So, you're not Daryl?" "Nope, Brian." I can't believe that I handed this guy my jack and just watched him crank up my car while lying on the frozen pavement. I don't even remember how many times I apologized. Guy wouldn't even let me hand him some cash. He just left in full cheer and told me to pay it forward. Aftermath. I waited another 10 minutes for Daryl, but gave up and left after finding his employer's phone number and canceling the help request. My insurer had been sending me automated texts all day along the lines of, "Has your service provider arrived yet? Reply Y if yes, N if no. Has your service been completed yet? And how likely are you to recommend this service provider from 1 to 10? I can't figure out how to respond in such a way that no one gets in trouble or over or underpaid. Anyways, thanks, Brian. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay more for a salon service than initially quoted? I was visiting LA and booked a full head of highlights, $500, with a well-known colorist. Yes, it's pricey, but hey, when in Rome. I was quoted $500 and 3 hours when I booked the appointment online. Then the series of events went like this. I get to the appointment on time. I work remotely and took the day off to make this work. They inform me that they may not have the supplies to color my hair, but they are waiting for a delivery. We start the appointment 30 minutes late. I'm irritated, but at this point, I'm just happy to not have to reschedule. I tell the colorist I want to go as blonde as possible. For context, I have 2-month grown-out golden blonde, professionally done highlights. My hair is not thick, curly, or long. I've been told my hair is fine, but I have a lot of it. We make a game plan. She says she can't get me platinum today as it could damage, but we'll get as close as we can. She and her assistant go through foiling my hair. I've been getting salon highlights for about 20 years. From what I can tell, I'm getting a full head of highlights. At times, she stops to help other clients and comes back to me. At this point, I realize I'm going to be there all day. It's fine. After the hair is processed, they do a treatment in the shampoo bowl. I think it was a conditioning treatment. I wait another 30 minutes while that sits, followed by a gloss, sitting another 10 minutes, shampoo and blowout. I'm there for 5 hours, annoyed but didn't say anything and just happy to be done. I'm happy about the result. She mentions that she's surprised how much my hair lifted, but it's likely because it's in good condition. I pay the $500 with my card on file and tip 20% in cash. She tells me when I'm back in LA to book again and she can get me lighter. Great. I decide not to book that day just so I can see how it looks over the next few weeks. I leave excited with my new hair. 20 minutes later, I have a voicemail from the salon saying they undercharged me. The price wasn't $500. It's actually $1,000 for the service I had. I'm shocked. I freeze my credit card so they're unable to charge anything else. They start texting me saying that the colorist was so busy she forgot to mention it to the front desk. They keep calling. I'm annoyed now since we never discussed a price increase, never mind 2 times what was originally quoted. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay? I had intended to sleep on it and just message them back in the morning with feedback on how this is bad business, but they can charge my card. But now I really don't want to pay it. It would have been bad enough had they tried to charge me $1,000 when checking out, but I was already done at this point. Also, if it was $100 more or something, sure, whatever, mistakes happen. But double the initial price? And I wasted my whole day off there, most of it waiting around for color to process. As far as I know, it wasn't more work for her. Not the jerk. They didn't tell you before the service. They didn't tell you after the service. They didn't even tell you while you were still there. They only caught it after they told you everything was done. They did it once they realized she's a tourist. You tend to get upcharged when they know you won't be back, but this is very shady. Sorry, but they shouldn't have told her after the service. If they didn't tell her beforehand, they had no right to the upcharge. A professional should be able to accurately quote their services once you're in the chair. Price can be adjusted at that point once they know what they're up against. Total jerk move. Not the jerk. I've had a stylist make comments while coloring my hair that it was taking more bleach and more dye than expected. My hair was very short and just drinking the product. She had to get someone else who didn't have gloves covered in product already to open more things for both the bleach and the dye. The charge when the service was done was higher than originally quoted, but it wasn't fully double, and I already knew the service took more product than was in the original quote. OP is not the jerk. That salon is trying to commit theft if they're changing the price that late and just trying to charge the card anyway. If they at least said it while OP was still at the salon, they could have discussed and possibly met in the middle. But there is no excusing trying to charge that much extra after OP left. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you pay the full price they're asking for or not? Please let us know. I'd leave them more bad reviews online than they can imagine. Would I be the jerk if I let my uncle report my car as stolen? I'm 18, female. My parents divorced when I was 6. My mom remarried my stepdad, Oscar, while my dad remained single. I have 2 step-siblings who are 21 and 19, and 1 half-brother who's 8 from my mom's side. My dad didn't have any more kids. He was an active role in my life though. He traveled a lot, but we would always call and he'd visit me as soon as he got back. I could spend months in his house since he remained close to us, so I had equal access to my schools whenever it was his or my mom's custody time. Oscar doesn't like my paternal family at all, but it sucks. He always tried to boss me around, telling me that while I live at his house, he was my dad and I had to obey him. He tried to take away a bunch of the things my dad gave me, toys, clothes, tech, because I had to share with his kids. He tried to force a relationship, but I never cared. Well, my dad passed a year ago, and just a month or 2 before that, he had bought a brand new car. Since I'm his only kid, I was left pretty much everything. My uncle, 25, male, brought me a few things after the funeral, including the car, and told me that I should learn how to drive. He couldn't teach me before. He had to be away for college. I couldn't do it, and a few months ago I started to notice my car moved. I thought it was odd because Oscar has his own, but it turns out that he had been using it because he likes it. I said that he never asked for my permission and that he couldn't just use my things, but he laughed in my face and said that I was a child and he didn't need my permission, and that after all these years, I owed him. I called my uncle crying, and he told me to give him a call when Oscar took the car so he could report it as stolen. But I'm scared. Would I be the jerk if I let my uncle do it? I don't think my stepdad has any intentions to give my car back. Not the jerk. Your stepdad is a bully, and your mom sucks for allowing his behavior. You don't owe him anything, and you should let your uncle call the police. Otherwise, he'll keep doing this to you. OP. Yeah, she really sucks. She said we could swap cars, but my dad's is a 2022, and my stepdad's is a 2006 at best. It's not her car to swap, it's yours. If you don't want to swap, then tough crap for everyone else. Not the jerk. Sorry to hear about your situation, and I hope it improves. If you're legally an adult, then it is stolen property. Absolutely call the police and see if you can move in with your uncle. You're not the jerk at all. Please don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. I'm rooting for you. Or ask your uncle to come around and take your car back to his place to look after it for you until you can drive it. Or just hide the keys from your family. I strongly suspect stepdad will damage the car out of spite if he can't drive it. It needs to be moved out of his reach. Lady thought I worked at the museum, but I'm 10. When I was a kid, I used to really be into dinosaurs. Like really into them, knowing almost everything about my favorite ones, and had hopes of becoming a paleontologist. And yes, Jurassic Park, the first film, is still one of my favorite movies, right next to The Ballad of Big Al. Yup, I'm a nerd. Anyway, when I was a kid, we went to visit my grandparents in another state, and Grandma mentioned that a new museum had just opened near their city. And Mom and Dad thought, why not? I was excited. My sister was okay with it since we were going to her favorite shop afterward. Now keep in mind, I'm 10, over 5 feet, and a bit baby-faced still. Also, the museum employees were in safari-style clothes. I remember that well because I thought they looked cool and like real paleontologists. I don't remember what I was wearing, but Mom said they were just plain clothes. The museum was awesome. They had real skeletons behind a painted version of the dinosaur on the wall, and loads of information on each fossil and skeleton. I stood beside this kid younger than me, and he was confused about this one pterosaur skeleton above us, and he asked his mom what that bird was. When she didn't know, I'd tell him all about the little pterosaur and what they liked to eat, that they had feathers, their wing membrane being similar to bats, etc. You would have thought that I had told him all the secrets of the world with how wide his eyes were and this look of awe plastered on his face. He and I chatted for a long time as we walked around the museum, and I answered all the questions he had about them. After a while, the mom said, "Wow, you know these creatures well. Thank you for taking the time to give us a tour." I smiled before Mom called me over, and we went into the shop to look at the dinosaur stuff they had. I vaguely remember this, but Mom helped to fill me in. She has a sharper memory than I do. According to Mom, the lady was checking out with her son, and she started talking about me and how well I knew all about my job, saying that her son had so much fun, and asked the manager if they could give me a raise. The cashier asks who I was, and after she described me, the cashier was confused. That's when Mom stepped in and explained that I don't work there since I'm 10, but that I just love dinosaurs and love talking about them to anyone who wants to hear. The lady seemed embarrassed, but she was thankful to me nonetheless and asked my mom to tell me that for her. I was busy looking through the toys and wasn't listening to them. Her son waved goodbye to me as they walked out, and I waved back. Mom told me how proud she was and that I made that boy's day. I left with a big smile and a stuffed velociraptor to commemorate the occasion. So sorry to anyone who was expecting a crazy lady story, but I thought a wholesome one about a simple mistake leading to a fun day and making someone happy would have been better. Am I the jerk for taking my babies on the quiet carriage for a train ride? Me and my twins, who are 9 months, were traveling to see family and went via train. I lined the trip up with their nap schedule, so by the time we arrived at the station, they were asleep in their stroller. I first entered a normal carriage, but there were kids screaming, loud talking, music playing with no headphones, etc. I didn't want to deal with that for the 3-hour ride or risk the babies waking up, so I moved to the next carriage, which happened to be a quiet carriage. There were maybe 10 people in this carriage, and I could tell they weren't happy seeing the babies. No blame, I understand their concern. I sat in the seats closest to the doors, so if the babies woke up, I could leave. One lady in particular, 3 rows up, was sending me death glares, but I just settled in and ignored her. She came up to me before we'd even departed and told me it was a quiet carriage. I told her I knew and would move if we made any noise. She tried telling me kids weren't allowed in these carriages. Not true, but I just repeated what I said early and smiled until she walked away. About an hour into the ride, one of the babies makes a noise in their sleep. It lasted a second and was quieter than if someone were to have sneezed, coughed, etc., which had happened, yet I didn't say anything, nor did anyone else. The lady from earlier bolted right up, came up to me, and told me I had to go. She said I had violated the quiet carriage noises and made an attempt to grab my stroller. I hid her hand away, told her don't touch my stroller that my 2 kids were in, and told her to leave us alone. I told her that her water bottle filled with ice was making more noises than I was, and her scolding at me right now was more of a distraction. She left and came back with a train worker because I was apparently violating the quiet car rules. At this stage, my babies were awake, yet still not crying or fussing. The worker told the lady I wasn't breaking any rules and to go back to her seat. The rest of the trip went as planned, no noises from the babies. When I told my family this interaction, most told me that it was obvious kids aren't supposed to be in that carriage and I should have left. I thought it was fine since they were quiet. It wasn't an official rule or even suggested. Am I the jerk? Workplace gets robbed for thousands of pounds of stock after new boss tells me I'm not the supervisor and I must comply with my contract. Bit of background to this. So around 10 years ago, I worked for a small independent construction supply store. We sold various things from measuring tapes to power drills, plumbing fittings to sheet timber, and paint to roof tiles. I had been there for 3 years at this point and got on well with the whole team. There were around 12 employees in total and everyone helped everyone. The atmosphere was always happy and cheerful. The boss, let's call him Jeff, was a star. I loved him. He was laid back as heck and we had a lot of mutual interests, sports teams, bands, movies, etc. He would bring in stacks of donuts every Friday for the team. Jeff was just the best boss ever. We had this supervisor, Lynn, who had been with the company a good while. Lynn would come in early and open up in the morning before anyone else arrived and would stay back at night to lock up and close the gates. When Lynn left the company to move to his wife's home country about 2 years into my being there, I agreed with Jeff that I would take over from Lynn for regards to opening in the morning and closing at night. The verbal agreement with Jeff and HR/payroll was that I was not promoted as supervisor. I was happy with that as I didn't want the extra hassle. Plus, the soup had to work every third Saturday, where I didn't. Jeff took on the extra duties that went with the role. But I was to be paid an extra 2 hours per day for the added duties in the morning and at night. Things were normal for a good while, until Jeff went on long-term sick leave. He was a huge loss in and around the place, and naturally, we were all worried about him. I visited him regularly while he was absent and kept him up to date with the goings-on and gossip. In the meantime, the firm hired a temporary replacement manager, Rick the Jerk, to fill in for Jeff. This guy was a complete jerk, of the highest order. No one liked him. He was smug and arrogant. He would say crude things to us and had this top dog, tough guy attitude. Mess with me at your peril kind of guy. It was to the point where the donuts on a Friday were ordered to be stopped. Signs up, the lot. With the extra OT money, I had taken over the buying of the Friday donuts as to keep morale high. But no, it had to stop. Soon enough, Rick was assessing the timesheets and noticed my daily 2 hours overtime claim. He called me in to speak about it, and I informed him that as per the agreement with Jeff and HR/payroll, he asked if I had it in writing, and I said no. It was a verbal agreement that people from HR/payroll would back me up on. Rick was his typical arrogant, smarty self and told me, "I don't give a hoot what you have agreed. It ain't in writing, so you ain't getting the OT. I know it doesn't take 2 hours per day to lock and unlock a door or two. I have good reason to write you up for falsifying timesheets for this. It stops now. You work your stated hours, and you do only the stated duties as per your contract." Thing is, the silly jerk confirmed what he said to me by way of an email, just so I had it in writing, so I was perfectly clear as to what my place in the company was. Fine by me, Rick. That evening, I hung the shop keys in the key cabinet and went to wash up. I wasn't the last out, but I left at 5:05, instead of my usual 5:45 or thereabouts. I walked out while all the lights were left on, the doors were unlocked, and the gates were left open. Even the roller shutter door in the warehouse was left half open. The next morning, I arrived a little after 7:15 instead of my usual 6:30. Some colleagues had already turned up by this point. The place had been done over good style. All the power tools were gone. Loads of wood stock gone. Pipes all gone. Paint all gone. It had been ransacked good and proper. An estimated 30,000 to 40,000 pounds of stock was gone, and as the store was now a crime scene, we were all sent home until further notice. We all had to give statements to the police, and a few days later, I was called into a meeting with HR and Rick the Jerk. I was well aware of what was coming and was well prepared. He went to town on me. He accused me of being in on it as I was the only key holder. I wasn't, and that I was facing years in prison. I sat in silence as he fired me 6 times in that meeting. Dereliction of duties. Breach of a verbal contract. Apparently that's a thing. The lot. He was coming after me like wildfire because I had failed to ensure that the building was secured, as was the ongoing agreement put in place by my previous boss. After what seemed like forever having this irate lunatic scream at me, I asked HR if I could log into my emails on her computer. Surprisingly, Sarah agreed. Imagine the absolute crap-eating grin as I pulled up the 3-day-old email from Rick, reminding me of our conversation and confirming that I was to stick to the duties and times as stated in my contract, and smugly and innocently told Sarah, "I just did what my boss told me to do." And the best part was the sheer horror on Rick's face when I pulled out 5 printouts of that email and handed them to him and said, "I have more of these at home just in case you feel like destroying these ones and removing emails from the system. Now, is there anything else? Can I get back to work or am I still fired?" Rick resigned that day. Update. Wow, so much activity on this post. For all those who gave me awards, thank you so much, you magnificent people. One comment in particular to address where someone said I purposefully left the building vulnerable to thieves. I did not. I had no idea the building was going to be left open. I left in good spirits as I was on my way to a football game, soccer, that evening, and was happy that I would be able to leave earlier and would be able to park closer to the stadium. It's the simple things, eh? I complied with a direct verbal and written order from my supervisor. As we officially didn't have a supervisor after Lynn left, I took on the opening and closing duties as agreed with Jeff. I was told to stop this by Rick, which I did. On the evening in question, I was not the last one to leave, and the others who left after me assumed I was still inside somewhere as I was always last out prior to this happening. They had no reason to think I wasn't going to be locking up as usual. I didn't ask Rick who would be locking up at night from now on because, well, he wasn't a guy with whom I wanted to spend any more time or converse with any more than was absolutely necessary. I thought he would have done it and claimed the extra 2 hours a day of OT for himself. He was that kind of guy. He failed to put in place any directive to anyone in terms of locking up at night. The incident was, in my opinion, entirely his fault. As for the person/people who suggested Rick could have been in on it, the police tracked down who was responsible, and after a few days, there were no connections discovered to anyone in the company. Yeah, Rick was a jerk, but I honestly don't think he would have done something that could get him jail time. One of the guys arrested and charged admitted it and said it was an opportunist deal. They were driving around and spotted the lights on and no cars in the car park, so took the chance and got away with loads of equipment and materials. Total of 3 people jailed for a couple of years each. The business was located fairly close to one of the shadier parts of town, not the worst area, but certainly not Beverly Hills. Jeff had insurance to cover every possibility, including loss, fire, or theft as a direct result of non-criminal mismanagement, so the only cost to the company was a slightly higher insurance premium for the next couple of years. Jeff returned to work 2 months after the incident, 2011, and 2 of us were promoted into the supervisor and general manager roles. I was the new, official soup, so got a raise as well as the OT for opening and locking up. In 2013, Jeff sold out to a huge national building supplies firm and retired. He now plays golf 4 times a week and keeps good health. I left in 2015 due to the family feel of the business no longer being there, and the atmosphere was just different. Not bad in any way, just different. It wasn't the same and I wanted a new challenge. I still see Jeff from time to time and we remain good friends. Jeff's Construction Supplies is the only place I have ever worked where I kept in touch with colleagues since leaving. I saw Rick in a supermarket grocery store in a neighboring town, maybe 18 months or so ago. We made eye contact and I smiled at him, but he never acknowledged me. I don't know what he's up to these days, nor do I particularly care.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.